Baruchot habaot, ladies. Baruchot hanimtzaot. It's so nice to be with you here again, and also to the viewers on Torah Anytime. Thank you so much for tuning in and being a part of this amazing, amazing site. We're always so thrilled when you come back and you grace us with your presence, and you out there also, when you log on and you engage in Torah and Kedusha and Tahara, and you want to learn and you want to grow. Ashrechem Yisrael, Mika Amcha Yisrael. The women of Klal Yisrael are so busy at home, at work, and yet they find the time to engage in Torah study so that they can further the cause of Yahadut, so they could promote Torah, so that they could elevate their neshamot and bring all of that Kedusha and Tahara into your home. Ashrechem. So happy you're here. Keep coming. We have a lot of work to do today, and I would like to dedicate this shiur to Fang Tzadikim. As you know, tomorrow night, Be'ezrat Hashem, tomorrow night and also Tuesday, is the Yortzeit, is the Hilulah of Rachel Imenu Alea Shalom. We have a dinner in my home that I'm hosting. I'm going to give the viewers the following week a glimpse of what happened on that night. So I want to dedicate this shiur to Rachel Imenu. She should have nachat from all her banot, from all her daughters, and also to Rav Ovadia Yosef Alav Shalom, whose yahrzeit was last week, but we didn't have a chance to dedicate a shiur in honor of his name. All the Torah study and all the elevation of this next hour should be Lu'ilu Nishmat these two tzaddikim, and may they be Melitzei Yosher in the Shamayim, to pound the doors, the gates of Hashem, and to cause him to bring the Yeshua, the Karov Mamash. This week's parasha is Parashat Vayeira, and one of the strangest and most disturbing episodes in the entire Torah is recorded immediately before the destruction of Sodom. Two angels arrive at Lot's doorstep in Sodom. Lot showers them with hospitality, and he invites them into the protection of his home. It doesn't take long, however, before the evil residents of Sodom learn of the Malachim's presence, and they surround Lot's house, demanding that the strangers be handed over to them. Lot then seeks to protect his guests, and he confronts the screaming mob and attempts to reason with them. What does he do? He offers them his two unmarried daughters instead of the guests. The Sodomim refuse his offer, and they prepare to storm the house. At that moment, the angels afflict the attackers with blindness, and they inform Lot that he and his family have to escape the city if they want a chance at life, because the city is going to be destroyed. The question is, how are we to understand Lot's behavior? I mean, he welcomes these two strangers into his home, but then he's willing to sacrifice his own daughters to mob violence, probably to lo alenu, rape, to a pack of evil sinners. Does this incident with Lot provide us with any kind of window into his personality? And if so, what does his personality look like through that window? So in order to understand the depth of what's really taking place, we have to do a quick backup. And in doing so, we're going to discover a pattern that begins to emerge, a pattern that spans a few prakim and enables us to understand Lot and also his frightening behavior and journey. So our story actually begins with Avraham Avinu alav shalom and his nephew Lot, when they have to part ways. There's a dispute between the shepherds of Avraham and the shepherds of Lot, where Avraham turns to Lot and he says, Al na tehi meriva beni uvenecha, uven ro'i uven ro'echa. Please Let there not be a quarrel between me and you, or between my herdsmen and yours. Ki anashim achim anachnu, because we're kinsmen, we're related. Halo chol haaretz lefanecha, isn't the entire land before you? Hiparedna me'alai, please part from me, separate yourself from me. Im hasmol ve'emina, ve'im hayamin ve'asmela. If you're going to go left, I'm going to go right. And if you go right, I'm going to go left. Now, ladies, given the opportunity to choose anywhere within the land of Canaan, which we know as Eretz Yisrael, Lot chooses the fertile fields of the Yarden. And then the Torah HaKdosha tells us, Vaye'ehal et Sdom, and he tented until Sodom. Two elements immediately grab our attention. First of all, the Torah HaKdosha uses the word Vaye'ehal, and he tented. That's the word that's used to describe Lot's relationship to the land near Sodom. Now, this is a very strange lashon to use, because generally speaking, when the Torah wants to refer to a residence in a particular location, the words that are used are either lashevet, which means to settle, or the word lagur, which means to dwell. But in this case, however, HaKadosh Baruch Hu uses a very transient term, to tent. Why? Secondly, the words ad Sodom, until Sodom, particularly the word ad, which means until, is a very ambiguous word, and it seems strange in this pasuk. Especially since Chachamim tell us that the word ad can mean two things depending on the context. It could mean up to and including, or it can sometimes mean up to but not including. So by saying that Lot tented ad Sodom, the Torah is leaving his situation very ambiguous. Well, I really do want to know, and I hope you guys want to know too. Is Lot in the city, or is he outside the city? Because from the pasuk, the answer is not so clear. It seems as the Torah is going out of its way to convey a feeling of ambivalence on Lot's part as to what his relationship with the city of Sodom is. Where are you, Lot? What's at Sodom? Are you until Sodom, meaning before? Are you on the outskirts of Sodom? Are you in Sodom, up to and including? But guess what? The reason for his hesitant state are made clear in the next pasuk, which says, "Ve'anshei Sodom ra'im ve'chata'im laHashem me'od." And the citizens of Sodom were very evil and very sinful towards God. In other words, Lot is fully aware of the true nature of the city of Sodom, and he consciously chooses to tent at its borders. He literally has one foot in the city and one foot out of the city. Lot actually believes that he can live on the edge of Sodom without being affected by its evil. That's number one it's an introduction. Moving on, Lot is taken captive during a war involving Sodom, and the Torah informs us that they took Lot and all his wealth, the son of Avraham's brother, and they went. And then it says, Vehu Yoshev Besdom, and he, Lot, was living in Sodom. Oh, this is an important piece of information here, because it's telling us that Lot is no longer living at the edge of the city, but rather in the city of Sodom. At first, Lot seems a little sketchy about the idea of living there, but now he seems very, very comfortable. And finally, we meet Lot again when the two malachim come to his home, and this time the pasuk tells us, And Lot was sitting b'sha'ar Sodom, in the gates of Sodom. Now ladies, what you need to know when you read these words is that only certain people had the privilege of sitting at the gates of a city during those times. The elders and the officials of a city, they were the ones that were given that privilege. So we see that at this point, Lot's transformation is complete. He moved from the edge of the city to the center of the city, and he's now a respected elder of this evil place. The same man who felt he'd be able to withstand the temptation of that city fell prey to its powers. So now that we have this personal transformation as a backdrop to our story, we could begin to understand the strange and inexplicable behavior of Lot when he's confronted by that angry mob outside his door. You should know that Lot was not an evil man. He was a weak man. His most fatal flaw was his failure to recognize his own weakness. By the way, that is the nature of man in general. Not just man as in mankind, but Chachamim tell us that biologically a man has this problem. He could not admit weakness. But going back to Lot, he believed he could withstand the temptations of Sodom. But without realizing it, he was dragged into that life and he began to change. So the Torah is telling us straight out, you cannot live near Sodom and remain unchanged. Lot is now at the most crucial stage of his life. He's trying to reconcile the dichotomy that's taking place inside of him, because on the one hand, he desperately attempts to hold true to the minhagim that he witnessed in his uncle Avraham's house. This is why he welcomes the guests so warmly and he treats them so royally. He's willing to go to any lengths to protect them. But at the same time, he can easily cross over into that horrific world of Sodom by offering his two daughters to what he knows will be a very cruel and brutal end. Ladies, Lot fails because he believes that he can live in two worlds at once. In two worlds which simply cannot coexist. You know where we're going with this. We'll talk about that in detail soon. And this is a tremendous yesod, ladies. Lot's story is a lesson concerning the effects of the external environment on our lives and how we bring that external environment into our homes, into our living rooms. Velo alenu, I don't want to say it, but even into the bedroom. We must be aware of the world that surrounds us, and we have to actively reject those elements that don't seem compatible with Torah ideals, with Torah standards, with halakha, with kedusha, with emet. Sometimes this is very difficult because the power of the outside world is so strong. But even more frightening is the fact that the outside influences have already penetrated our communities, our homes, our hearts, and our souls in a manner that's changing the nature and the core of Judaism. And I'm not referring to the activities of the secular world, some of which I'd rather not mention. The things that are going on out there that people are engaged in, the activities of the world. Let's not talk about that. I'm talking about the ways of the world. Chachamim tell us that in every country, believe it or not, this is an amazing thing, in every country there is a city or cities that are just like Sodom. And it's not just the lack of morality that we're confronted with today. It's the traits, the attitude, and the essence of a Sodom-like world in our generation. There almost seems to be this undertone of a lack of compassion that's replaced with a passive nonchalant, and even sometimes a cruel demeanor. Think of it this way. Think of Sodom. Where else can you be penalized for having guests than in Sodom? Where else could you be put to judgment for sharing your meal with somebody if not in Sodom? Where else could you fear execution for having been kind towards somebody if not in the city of Sodom? But ladies, hasn't this kind of attitude infiltrated our hearts? How often does it happen that we may hear people tell us, why did you invite those people over? Don't you want some little peace and quiet? Or what about the attitude of, you didn't prepare enough food for Shabbat, so, they'll understand if you tell them that they can't come because you didn't make enough food. Ladies, Vayeira ad Sodom means we shouldn't place our tents of holiness anywhere near the attitude of such a city. It should never get to the place of ad Sodom, because even being on the edge of such a trait, of such characteristics, of such cruelty is a problem. Ad Sodom means one shouldn't think that if he's simply on the edge of an influential circumstance, that he won't be changed by that circumstance, because, ladies, it only took a transition of one pasuk for Lot to go from tenting to living in Sodom. Therefore, we should be very mindful of this heartless attitude that leaves people feeling very dejected, very left out, sad, alone, unworthy. We should be mindful of an unfeeling approach that doesn't allow us to reach out to others. We should be careful of that fine line where we're literally sitting on the edge of a cruel remark. Ad Sodom, ladies. We have to be careful not to find ourselves tenting on the border of a hurtful action. Ad Sodom means when Lashon Hara is mamash at the tip of our tongues, you have to stop. That's the idea of Ad Sodom. It means that we're at the edge of a Sodom-like attitude. If we're there already, most likely, the next thing we know, we'll adapt that attitude and we're going to fail. We can't be on the border of Sodom and not be influenced by its evil ways. Therefore, we have to guard ourselves and keep ourselves very far from the mindset of Sodom. And ladies, I say this to the married women especially. Your home is a mini Bet Mikdash. Your bedroom is Kodesh Kodashim. It's the inner sanctum of your home. God forbid that you should bring the outside world into the mini Bet Mikdash and into your Kodesh Kodashim. I know couples that have a television in their bedroom. Explain to me why. Why the tumah that's on that screen has to come between a Jewish man and a Jewish woman, that when they are together, they have to bring down a holy neshama, and the thoughts that are last on their minds is of the tumah that was on that screen. You need to get the television out of that room, out of the house. There are some couples that answer text messages in their bedroom. Are you kidding me? Put the cell phone out. Ad Sodom. Be careful with living on the edge of Sodom. Bracha will not come. Only destruction comes to such places. Only pain comes to such a place. Only division and separation between a couple ultimately comes to such a place. Don't be on the border of Sodom. Moving on, we find two dramatic events in this week's parasha. The destruction of the cities of Sodom ve'Amorah and Akedat Yitzchak. I want to discuss Avraham Avinu's very strange reaction to these two events. Concerning Sodom ve'Amorah, Avraham argues with HaKadosh Baruch Hu in an attempt to change Hashem's mind about destroying Sodom. But when he's confronted with the commandment of sacrificing his son, all of a sudden, he's silent and obedient. I have a question. Why does Avraham Avinu react to the nisayon of the Akedah with a deafening silence? Where's the Avraham that we know and admire? The man who debated with Hashem, who struggled with Hashem at every stage of life and was unwilling to accept the world as it was. Where did he disappear to? Pitom, he's quiet. All the rabbis are baffled by his sudden silence, and the Midrashim attempt to fill in the blanks of his silence. But then we're told that actually Avraham was not silent at all. Deep down, he was torn by the task that lay ahead of him, the Akedat Yitzchak. After all, he's a father. He's moved beyond measure by compassion and love for his child. He was also the first Av, the first forefather, and he's now trying and struggling to reconcile HaKadosh Baruch Hu's promise to him that Ki miYitzchak yikareh lecha zara, from Yitzchak will come the Jewish people. Avraham is a man that's torn by the current mitzvah to sacrifice that very son that he holds so dear. Doesn't know what to do. And the Midrash Tanchuma presents us with a detailed narrative of what was taking place when Avraham was on his way to the Akedah. We're told that the Satan disguised himself as an old man and he argued with Avraham. And he told Avraham, Avraham, where are you going? Have you lost your mind? A child is given to you after 100 years and you're going to slaughter him? Tomorrow, God is going to accuse you of murder, and then you're going to have the blood of your own son on your hands. Is this what you want? And of course, Avraham is not persuaded by the Satan, who continued to place stumbling blocks of all sorts in his way. But the Midrash outlines for us the profound inner struggles that must have been taking place inside Avraham's neshama. The Midrash also tells us that the Satan who confronted Avraham was none other than his own shadow. What does this mean? It's a very deep thought, ladies. Chachamim tell us that this Satan came to him in the form of his own thoughts that were wrestling within him. It was those thoughts that whispered in his ear the following: after waiting for so long for a son, am I now going to lose him by my own hands? How could a God who promised me yesterday that through Yitzchak a great nation will be produced, how can he now command me to take this son and bring him up as a korban? Have to kill him? Can God change his mind so easily? And if yes, will he change his mind tomorrow? The Midrash tells us that even with his own thoughts, his own inner fears and struggles, his own insecurities, even with all of this, Avraham did not sway from the proper path. Now that's amazing, because deep down Avraham is clearly shaken up, but against all odds he carries out the will of the Ribono Shel Olam. The Midrash paints a very complex picture of Avraham's inner struggles, and yet the question still remains. Why is it left up to the rabbis to fill in the blanks for us when he's quiet? Why can't the Psukim just inform us what was going on in Avraham's heart and what was going on in his mind while he was walking towards the Akedah? The Torah doesn't shy away from giving us detailed accounts of other occasions when Avraham questioned and even argued with HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Why does the Torah narrate Avraham's argument in defense of the city of Sodom, but in the case of the Akedah, he's left silent, and we have to fill in the blanks? Perhaps the answer lies in recognizing that these two events, Sodom, the destruction of Sodom, and the Akedah, represent the two separate ways in which HaKadosh Baruch Hu relates to man. You see, when it comes to Sdom ve'Amorah, Hashem is operating within the realm of din, judgment. It's pure judgment. But in the case of HaKadosh Baruch Hu's command to Avraham concerning the Akedah, that's not within the realm of din. Now, we're entering the world of Nisayon. That's the realm of challenges. And that's a whole other world. When Hashem relates to man in the world of din, of judgment, everything makes sense. Why? Because we clearly see the cause and effect. HaKadosh Baruch Hu tells Avraham, the inhabitants of the city of Sodom and Amorah, they're evil. Therefore they deserve to perish. I have to destroy the city. It's too much already. We see that in the realm of din, it's easy to understand the effect because there is a cause that creates the outcome. Therefore, as long as we remain in the realm of din, we have permission to argue and to debate with HaKadosh Baruch Hu. As a matter of fact, HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants us to argue with him. Why? Because perhaps some logical argument that man will make will actually persuade Hashem to remove himself from the world of din, to relinquish his intended path of strict justice, and to instead enter into the realm of rachamim, of divine mercy. We see that Moshe Rabbeinu, alav shalom, attempted to do this, and he succeeded when the Jews sinned with the golden calf. And that's the way it is. That's Moshe Rabbeinu taught us that too. Where Hashem wants us to argue and debate with him when we're in the realm of din. Because perhaps there's one more tefillah that we'll recite, or one more plea that we'll make on behalf of somebody else that might just tip the scale of judgment in their favor. And this, says the Midrash, is the reason why Avraham took the liberty of arguing with HaKadosh Baruch Hu in defense of Sdom ve'Amorah. However, when Hashem brings us into the world of Nisayon, very little makes sense in our eyes. Things start to appear a bit hazy and unclear. Even Hashem himself seems hidden from our view. Therefore, to the human mind and eyes, there's no noticeable logic to Hashem's action in the world of Nisayon. In other words, in the world of Nisyonot, things don't make sense and we have very little understanding of Hashem at that moment. In such a situation, in the world of Nisayon, to argue and to debate with God is pointless. Obviously, there's a reason to Hashem's decisions and actions, but because we're now in the realm of Nisayon, we can't begin to understand those reasons. And that's the difference between those two episodes and those two worlds. Our challenge within the realm of Nisayon is simply to pass the Nisayon and to respond to HaKadosh Baruch Hu's will with dignity, with faith, and with an unwavering commitment and loyalty to him, and that's all. So, that's why Avraham remains silent when he's confronted with the commandment of the Akedah. He realizes that he just now entered Olam HaNisayon and that his challenges have now changed. Avraham was able to distinguish between the two worlds of din and Nisayon. He was able to see the difference between Hashem's logical decision to destroy Sdom ve'Amorah and the inexplicable commandment to sacrifice his son. Therefore, Avraham was able to react to each of those enormous events in the correct way. We, however, are unable to make such distinctions. We're not on the level of Avraham. We never know whether a particular challenge in life is a reflection of the world of din, or if it's in the realm of Nisayon, or perhaps it's a combination of both. We don't know. So the lesson for us here today is that we're meant to react to every challenge and situation on both levels at once. What does that mean? It means that since we're not on the level of Avraham Avinu to know for a fact whether we've now entered Olam Hadin or Olam HaNisayon, you and I are allowed to debate with Hashem, to daven to Hashem, to plead with Hashem, and to even argue with Hashem for justice on behalf of ourselves and all of Am Yisrael and the entire world. We have that right, because we don't know. At the same time, when we finished davening and all our arguments have been offered, we also have to turn to HaKadosh Baruch Hu and accept His will with ahava, with love. And then, ladies, we have to daven all over again. Except this time, it's to ask HaKadosh Baruch Hu to give us strength to be able to pass the nisayon when we're pained by the lack of understanding. Moving on, Chachamim inform us that during Avraham's time, many parents would sacrifice their children to the Avodah Zarah. Avraham was against this despicable act, and he convinced people not to engage in this abominable behavior. He rebuked the people, and as a result of his rebuke, many people stopped this heinous act of sacrificing their children. Now, it's very interesting that immediately after the psukim that describe Avraham's rebuke to the people, after we're given an idea of Avraham's life's goal and everything that he stood for, as well as everything that he preached, that's when HaKadosh Baruch Hu commands him to take Yitzchak and bring him up as an olah. Now, this is quite a dramatic moment, a very big test. Think about it. Why is Avraham different from all the other martyrs in Jewish history? There were many Avrahams in our history. Let's discuss the era of the Crusades, for example. The Crusades were, quote-unquote, holy wars imposed by the Christians primarily against Jews, claiming that the killing was in the name of Yeshu. And they forced people to convert to Christianity. The Gentiles forced many Jews to convert, to bow down to idols and worship the cross. What kind of religion is that forces people? You know that the rabbis of that generation made a halachic ruling that Jews should take their babies and kill them. Why? Because it would be better that these infants should die Jews and be admitted into Olam Haba than to risk the chance of them growing up and turning into devout Christians who don't even know who God really is. So the Jewish parents took their children and they killed them. Lo alenu, we should never know from such a nisayon. Tell me, that's not an Akedat Yitzchak? How come we don't discuss those martyrs of long ago? Why is Avraham Avinu the one who's considered the one who did such an amazing act of faith? This act of self-sacrifice was even seen during the Holocaust, which wasn't too long ago. Jews walked to the gas chambers with the words Shema Yisrael, Hashem Elokeinu, Hashem Echad on their lips. During the time of the Inquisition, thousands of Jews perished al Kiddush Hashem, where they were burned at the stake. So dying for the sake of religion is not something that's new to the Jewish people. And Avraham also did this. So what made his test so significant that it was considered the ultimate sacrifice? There's a story of the Koshnitzer Magid, alav shalom. A woman came to him desperate to have children, and she asked him for a blessing, for a bracha. After thinking about it, the Magid told her, I'm very sorry. I wish I could give you a bracha, but it's not the right time yet. And the woman was obviously dejected, and she began to argue with him. What do you mean it's not the right time? I came for a bracha. And the Magid insisted, I'm sorry, but it's not the time yet. And when he saw how desperate she was, he told her a story about another woman who once came to the Baal Shem Tov HaKadosh, alav shalom, for a bracha, to have children. So the Magid tells this lady, that lady pleaded with the Baal Shem Tov that he give her a bracha for a child. And he gave her the same answer I'm giving you, that it's not the time yet. And that poor woman left feeling very sad. But as you know, the Baal Shem Tov was a big tzaddik, and she had the utmost respect for him. That lady was a poor woman, and she had only 2 coins to her name. And she thought to herself, how could I go to the Baal Shem Tov and ask for a bracha when I didn't even offer him a gift? I came empty-handed. But what was she going to give? She was poor. So she took the only 2 coins that she had left, and she bought a piece of fabric. And from this piece of fabric, she sewed the Baal Shem Tov HaKadosh a beautiful robe. One day, when the Baal Shem Tov was on his way out of the city, the woman ran after him, and once again, he thought she was coming for a bracha, and he said to her, I'm sorry, but I already told you that I see in the Shamayim, I see in the heavens that it's not yet the right time. And the lady said to the Baal Shem Tov, I know it's not the right time yet, but I felt badly that last time I met you, I came empty-handed. So I made you a robe as a gift. Please accept it. The Baal Shem Tov HaKadosh was so moved. He said to her, I know how poor you are, and you went out of your way with such a self-sacrifice just to make me a robe. I give you a beracha that even if it's not the right time yet, you're going to have a child. And sure enough, that year, she gave birth to a little boy. The Kuznetzer Maggid looked at that other lady, and he said to her, I was that little baby. So the woman was shocked. And she said to the Maggid, Rabbi, I'll sew you 3 robes. Just please bless me that I should have a child, that I should have a baby. So the Kuznetzer Maggid said, I can't do that, because you know what the difference is between you and my mother? When my mother made that robe for the Baal Shem Tov, she didn't know this story. Now that you know this story, you'll gladly sew me 10 robes. My mother was the innovator of the story, and that's what makes her so special, because she was the first. That's what made Avraham so different, ladies. He didn't know the stories of the Inquisition when he did what he did. He didn't know the stories of the Crusades or the Holocaust when he was willing to sacrifice Yitzchak. We know the stories, so we know what to do when our religion is compromised. But Avraham was the first of his kind. Before him, such a concept did not exist. He was the trendsetter. He set the Jewish way in motion for generations to come. That's what made him so special. He was the first, like the woman in our story. Rav Chaim Volozhin, alav shalom, who was the Talmid Muvhak of the Gaon of Vilna, alav shalom, gives us a tremendous insight into this concept that we're talking about. He says that just like children inherit from their father physical wealth, like money, a house, or a business, a child also inherits the spiritual genes of the parents, of the father and the mother. And Rav Chaim quotes a pasuk. He says, "Mithalech bedumot tzadik." It's a pasuk. A man that walks in a righteous path, ashrei barav acharav. Fortunate are the children that come after him. Why? If my father walks on a righteous path, why am I fortunate? He's the fortunate one, not me. You know why the children are fortunate if the father was a tzaddik? Because the child is going to inherit his righteous genes. After a father dies, he gives his children spiritual powers and the traits that he acquired. And that's an amazing concept. Because I'm not so sure how it happens, but it happens. And that's why you have to be careful, ladies. Work on your midot. Strengthen your emunah in Hashem. Elevate your neshama, because after 120 years, you don't only want to leave your children something of material value. You want to leave them something spiritual, so that they'll be able to conquer any nisayon of life. So Rav Chaim says that when Avraham passed the test of Akedat Yitzchak, he was the first to create this concept of tremendous self-sacrifice for HaKadosh Baruch Hu. It was from him that all the Jews throughout the generations inherited the gene of self-sacrifice. You hear this? Anybody who subsequently killed their child during the times of the Crusades or sacrificed their child during the Holocaust received the strength to be able to do this from the source. Mithalech bedumot tzaddik ashrei bara b'charav. Because the father was righteous, because he was upstanding, because he was kadosh, the father, he was able to transmit this to the children after him. Avraham was the greatest because he created this concept. So if you and I are able to make sacrifices, it's because we had a father that mastered this concept, and his name was Avraham. One thing I do have to point out concerning Avraham's great sacrifice. You see, when Avraham was told to sacrifice Yitzchak, he wasn't only faced with a feeling of a father to a son. He wasn't only confronted with the challenge of having to sacrifice his beloved child. This wasn't the only problem that he faced. Avraham was faced with the following dilemma. He thought to himself, Hashem, if I sacrifice my son, what is going to happen to the thousands of people that I converted? All my life I preached chesed. I preached against this awful custom of killing children. And now you want me to go and slaughter my son? What are the headlines going to read in tomorrow's paper? Hypocrite rabbi kills son after preaching against it. Thousands go back to idolatry. Imagine if you would see such a dramatic contradiction in your communities. Imagine if your rabbi, who taught you everything and helped you come back to Hashem, suddenly sacrificed his son. You'd say, forget it. This is what religion is. This is a joke. Avraham doesn't only risk his son being placed on the altar, on the Mizbeach. He risked everything that he fought for and stood for. That was also put on the Mizbeach on that day. He risked creating the biggest Chilul Hashem in history. So, Avraham's greatness was that he placed all these fears and calculations aside. He was willing to throw away his entire career, to sacrifice his own life if need be. Because there's no doubt that after killing Yitzhak, he would have been dead the next day. I mean, all those people that he taught would have come to his tent with axes. So Avraham, in an act of total faith in Hashem, didn't question, although he was the greatest intellectual mind of his generation. And it's that intellectuality which gave him the foresight, because he said to himself, Hashem knows best. I don't know anything. After Avraham spends years bringing people back to a monotheistic life, after he makes a name for himself, after he pitches his tents and becomes the rabbi of that generation, only then does HaKadosh Baruch Hu give him the ultimate test. Because it's at that point that the test is going to be most difficult. And Avraham was so calm that the Pasuk tells us he woke up early the next morning to fulfill the mitzvah. What does that mean? Think about it. If Hashem told you, God forbid, that tomorrow you're going to sacrifice your son, would you be able to fall asleep that night? Would you want to wake up early in the morning? Yet Avraham manages to fall asleep and he wakes up early the next morning. And that's because his philosophy was, Hashem knows best. Sometimes as Jews, we do things we don't always understand because we know that it's Hashem who's managing this world. I'm not managing this world. I don't even think I'm managing my own life. HaKadosh Baruch Hu is the one pulling my strings. I'm just the vehicle by which HaKadosh Baruch Hu fulfills His Ratzon. And my nisayon and my test is to make sure that my Ratzon and His Ratzon are aligned. A lot of times our Ratzon are not aligned with Hashem's. Sometimes we want something else than what Hashem wants for us. Because we think we know best, we think we're the ones who created the world, we think we're God. We're not God. We didn't create ourselves, we didn't create the world. Even the children that we bring into this world are not completely ours. Hashem is a partner. If HaKadosh Baruch Hu wouldn't put a neshama into that fetus, the child would not be born. HaKadosh Baruch Hu oversees that child in the womb. It's not you. Everything is Hashem. Everything is Hashem. One last thought. The Or HaChaim HaKadosh Alav Shalom says that before the Akedah, Yitzchak was not able to bring children into the world. Apparently, we learned this in a couple of classes already, Yitzchak possessed a female neshama. Now, in the physical world, in order to produce a child, a man and a woman have to unite in order to produce a baby. In the spiritual world, it works the same way. Meaning that in order for a man and woman in this physical world to produce a child, the biological man, physical man, has to have a male neshama, and a woman has to have a female neshama. And then they can produce a child. But, so what happened? Yitzchak did not have a male neshama, so he wasn't able to produce children. But when Avraham put him on the Mizbeach, HaKadosh Baruch Hu made a switch of neshamot. Hashem took Yitzchak's female neshama and placed another neshama in his body of a male. And it was that neshama that was able to produce children. And we're reading the story and we're thinking, wait, Avraham, don't do it. Don't take the knife. Don't kill the boy. You're killing the Jewish people. If Yitzchak is dead, there won't be a Jewish nation. Stop. But it was just the opposite. Because there was an Akedah, because he took the knife in his hand, Yitzchak received a second neshama, and it was that neshama that produced Yaakov and the Shevatim and all of Am Yisrael. So maybe Avraham thought that he was giving something up. I'm about to sacrifice my child. I'm giving something up that's very valuable to me, that I cherish. But in the end, because he listened to Hashem and didn't question, not only did the Akedah not take place at the end, but a strong Jewish nation was forged, constructed as a result of this great sacrifice. In other words, ladies, if you follow the rules, you come out a winner. If you don't, eventually you lose. Don't forget that Hashem knows best. But what happens? We come along and we say, oh, this is too much. It doesn't suit me. This is not the kind of life I want. I don't feel like it. Doesn't make sense to me. The rabbis are lying. It's as if we run the show and not Hashem. Everyone's busy producing the greatest show on earth, and then it ends up looking like a Ringling Brothers Barnum and Bailey circus. That's what it looks like. You want a circus in your life? No problem. But beware of the consequences. Beware of the bears, tigers and bears. Oh my. The lesson of Akedat Yitzchak is concerning one man that had tremendous faith, who in return gave us that special trait of emunah. We Jews inherited the spiritual gene from Avraham. And if we're still standing here today, if there's some of us out there who are still loyal and steadfast and committed to Yadut in a correct way, it's because of this great man, Avraham Avinu. Our forefather Avraham and his son Yitzchak, who was allowed himself to be tied on the Mizbeach, they taught us the essence of being devout followers of the Ribono Shel Olam. So I want to end the shiur with the words that the Ramban Alav Shalom writes concerning the end of the Akedah. The Pasuk says in this week's Parshat, Ki ya'an asher asita et hadavar hazeh. It is because you have done this thing, meaning the Akedah. The Ramban explains that from the beginning, HaKadosh Baruch Hu promised Avraham that his descendants would be like the stars in the heavens and like the sands on the shore. They'd be many. But here's the thing. HaKadosh Baruch Hu added something to the package at the end of the Akedah. Avraham received a special bonus. What was that bonus? Ya'an asher asita ma'aseh hagadol hazeh. Now that you did this great act of the Akedat Yitzchak, the Ramban says the following concerning these words in the Torah. Shenishba b'shmo hagadol. HaKadosh Baruch Hu swore to Avraham using his ineffable name. Shirash zaro et shar oivav. That his descendants, the Jewish nation, will overcome their enemies. והובטח לו שלא יגרום שום חטא שיכלה זרעו. HaKadosh Baruch Hu guaranteed that the Jews cannot commit any sin that will cause them to be annihilated completely by their enemies. Even if the Jews will commit the worst sins, Hashem guaranteed Avraham that the Jewish nation will never cease to exist. The Jewish people will always succeed, and no Gentile will ever be able to eradicate us completely. Before Akedat Yitzchak, there was no such guarantee. Hashem just guaranteed that we would be many. But there was a strong possibility that if the right enemy came along, it could very well be over for us, and that's it. But after Akedat Yitzchak, it says, Hinei haftacha shelema begeula atida lanu. In the end of days, when the Jews might be in a very serious and precarious situation because of their enemies. As a result of this episode of the Akedah, we could be sure that we will not cease to exist. We will overcome and we will triumph. At the end of the day, when it's all over, Am Yisrael is going to be left standing. And let me point out, by the way, that this is why Ishmael has a tremendous resentment towards us. You see, when Yitzchak walked onto that Mizbeach, Ishmael's strength flew south for the winter forever. And the Arabs know this very well, by the way. This is why they have tremendous resentment towards us. This is why they hate us so much. And by the way, they is modern day Arabs. They'll come to destroy us at any cost. If you look at 8th and 9th century Islam, they love the Jews. They love the Torah. It's modern day Arabs in the last 100 years. But the point is that the Ramban says that we have a guarantee from Borei Olam that at the end of the day, Vegavar Yisrael, Klal Yisrael is going to be triumphant. And just as the Pasuk says, Yemin Hashem Romema, Yemin Hashem Osachayil, Ve'Yisrael Osachayil. Am Yisrael is going to prevail. Uva leTzion Goel. The Redeemer is going to come to Yerushalayim Bezrat Hashem. Amen ve'amen.